The departure hall buzzed with rolling suitcases, boarding announcements, and the kind of laughter that always felt louder when it wasn't meant for you. I stood near the check-in counter, my hands clenched around the strap of my worn leather tote, watching my family cluster together like a perfectly staged photo. My father, Raymond Collins, leaned casually on his carry-on, sunglasses perched on his head as if he owned the entire terminal. My sister Brianna scrolled through her phone with a smug smile, already dressed like the vacation had started without me. I should have known better than to believe this trip would be different. Boarding passes, the airline agent said cheerfully. Dad handed over his first, business class, then Mom's. Same. Brianna's too. The agent smiled wider with each scan. Then she looked at me. I reached into my bag. Empty. I felt the pause stretch. The silence sharpened. Dad turned slowly, eyes flicking from my hands to my face. That familiar expression appeared, the one that always came right before he made sure everyone else felt superior. Well, he said loud enough for people behind us to hear. Don't tell me you forgot your ticket. Brianna snorted. I swallowed. It should be. Dad waved me off. You know, maybe this is for the best. Vacations are expensive. Not everyone can keep up. A few people glanced over. Brianna finally looked up from her phone. Dad, stop, she said, pretending to be polite. Then she added, yeah, I mean, she's barely managing rent. What was she going to do? Ask to sit on our laps. They laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not awkward. A real one. Mom didn't say a word. She just adjusted her scarf and stared straight ahead as if silence made her innocent. I felt my cheeks burn, not from embarrassment, but from something heavier. Years of it. Years of being the extra child. The one who chose the wrong career. The one who didn't marry rich. At least that's what they thought. Dad leaned closer to me, lowering his voice in a way that somehow made it worse. Sweetheart, economy tickets aren't cheap either. Maybe next time when things improve. Brianna grabbed her passport. Come on, we don't want to miss the lounge. The agent avoided my eyes. Just like that, they turned away. My family walked off toward security, laughing, relaxed, united. While I stood there like luggage someone decided wasn't worth checking in. I didn't cry. That surprised me. Instead, I stepped aside, pulled out my phone, and checked the time. 2:17 p.m. He was late, but he was always worth waiting for. I took a seat near the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching planes taxi across the runway. People rushed past me, business travelers, couples, families, beginning memories. I could almost hear my father's voice in my head, listing every reason I didn't belong. I ignored it. Instead, I opened my messages. One unread text. Evan running behind. Board meeting went longer than planned. Don't move. I smiled. Not the forced kind. The real one. Because Evan never missed anything that mattered. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Across the terminal, I saw my family again near the private lounge entrance. Brianna was posing for photos. Dad looked proud, arm around her shoulder like she was proof he'd done something right. Brianna spotted me. She leaned toward Dad and whispered something. He turned. Our eyes met. His smile returned, but this time it was sharp. He walked over. You still here? He asked. Security's that way in case you're lost. I'm waiting, I said calmly. For what? Brianna joined him, tilting her head. A miracle? Dad chuckled. Look, we'll send you pictures. You can live vicariously. I stood up. I was about to respond when the sound cut through everything. A low, powerful hum. Engines, not commercial. People started turning their heads. The windows reflected movement on the far side of the tarmac. A sleek black aircraft rolled into view, escorted by ground crew moving with urgency. Whispers rippled through the terminal. That's not a regular flight. Is that private? Who's landing here? Dad frowned. What's going on? Then my phone vibrated. Evan, I've arrived. Footsteps echoed behind me. Slow, confident, unhurried. I turned. Evan Hayes walked toward me, tall and composed in a tailored charcoal suit, his coat draped over one arm, his expression softening the moment his eyes found mine. The noise of the terminal seemed to dim around him, like the world knew to step aside. "Sorry," he said gently, reaching me. The board wouldn't stop talking numbers. He kissed my forehead. Just like that. Public, easy, certain. My father froze. Brianna's mouth fell open. Mom finally turned. Evan glanced past me, noticing them for the first time. His polite smile sharpened, not cruel, but powerful. The kind that belonged to people who didn't explain themselves to anyone. "They're boarding without you?" he asked quietly. I nodded. Evan exhaled once, controlled. Then he took my hand. "Well," he said, voice calm but carrying, "let's not keep the jet waiting." Silence crashed like a wave. And for the first time in my life, my family didn't laugh. They stared, pale, still, unsure. And they had no idea this was only the beginning. The silence after Evan's words felt heavier than the luggage carts rolling past us. My father blinked first. "A jet," he said, forcing a laugh that didn't land. "That's funny. Very funny." Brianna's eyes darted between Evan's suit, his watch, and the way airport staff suddenly moved with purpose around us. A man in a dark blazer approached, headset tucked behind one ear. "Mr. Hayes," he said respectfully, nodding. "Everything is ready. Whenever you are." Dad's smile collapsed. "What's going on?" Mom finally asked, her voice thin. Evan didn't answer her. He turned to me instead, squeezing my hand gently. "Did they give you trouble?" I shook my head. "No, they just left." Evan nodded once. That was it. No anger, no scene, just acknowledgement, but something about that calm made my father uneasy. "Excuse me," Dad said sharply, stepping forward. "I don't know who you think you are, but this is a family matter." Evan looked at him then, not with hostility, with clarity. "I'm Evan Hayes," he said evenly. "Her husband." Brianna gasped. "Husband?" Dad scoffed. "That's impossible." "She would have told us." I met his eyes. "You never ask." That hit harder than any insult. Brianna crossed her arms. "So what? You married some consultant? Is that why you dress so simple now?" Evan smiled faintly. "Consultant is one word." The airport staff member cleared his throat. "Sir," the pilot asked if he'd prefer immediate departure or a brief delay for fueling adjustments. Dad's face drained of color. "Pilot," he repeated. People were openly staring now. Phones subtly lifted. Whispers circled us like static. Mom grabbed Dad's sleeve. "Raymond." Evan finally turned fully toward them. "I apologize for the confusion. My wife prefers privacy. That's why you may not recognize my name." Dad straightened. "Look, young man. Even if you chartered a flight, that doesn't." "It's not chartered," Evan said calmly. The words dropped like ice. "It's mine." Brianna laughed, too loud, too forced. "You expect us to believe you own a private jet?" Evan didn't respond. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his phone, tapped once, handed it to me. On the screen was a familiar logo, sleek, minimalist. Hayes Global Systems. Dad's breath hitched. "I know that company," he said quietly. "They just acquired 4 logistics firms last quarter." Evan finished. "And 2 aerospace contracts." Mom staggered back a step. That's a multi-billion-dollar company," she whispered. I watched realization crash through them one by one. Not joy, not pride, fear. Brianna's voice trembled. "You're saying she's my partner," Evan said. "In life and in business." My father looked at me like he was seeing a stranger. "You let us treat you like that," he demanded. "You let us think." I stepped forward. "No," I said calmly. "You chose to think that." The words felt clean, sharp, free. "I never hid who I was married to," I continued. "I just stopped explaining myself to people who never listened." Brianna's face twisted. "So this was all some kind of test?" "No," Evan said. "This was your choice." The airline agent from earlier stood frozen nearby, eyes wide. Evan turned to her. "Could you please cancel the boarding passes under Collins?" She nodded instantly. Dad snapped. "You can't do that." "They were issued under a shared booking," Evan said evenly. "Paid with my account." Mom's knees nearly buckled. You paid," she whispered. "Yes," Evan replied. "Including the vacation home." Brianna's phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor. "You mean the villa?" she croaked. "Yes." Dad's voice cracked. "Why would you?" "Because my wife wanted her family included," Evan said, glancing at me. "She believed people could change." I met his eyes. He wasn't angry. He was disappointed. And somehow that was worse. A pause stretched between us. Then Evan turned back to me, soft again. "Are you still interested in traveling with them?" I looked at my family, my father's shaking hands, my sister's panic, my mother's regret-filled stare, and I smiled. "No," I said. "I think I'd rather start my vacation feeling respected." Evan nodded. "Good choice." He offered his arm. I took it. As we walked toward the private terminal exit, I heard my father call my name, not in anger, in desperation. But I didn't turn back. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one being left behind. The doors to the private terminal slid shut behind us with a soft final sound. Inside, everything was quiet. Polished floors, low lighting, staff who spoke in respectful tones. No rushing, no judging glances, just calm. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. My phone buzzed once, then again, then nonstop. Unknown calls, missed calls, texts stacking faster than I could read. I didn't have to guess who it was. Evan noticed. "You don't have to answer." "I know," I said, "but I want to." I stepped aside and finally looked. "Dad, we need to talk." "Mom, please." "We didn't know." "Brianna, this is a misunderstanding." "Call me a misunderstanding." I laughed softly, not bitter, not angry, just clear. I typed one message and sent it to all three. "Me? I didn't change today. You just finally saw me." I put my phone away. Evan smiled. "Perfect." We boarded quietly. The jet interior was warm, elegant, designed for comfort instead of display. Evan placed my bag beside my seat and poured me water himself. "Are you okay?" he asked. I nodded. I didn't realize how heavy it all was until it stopped. He took my hand. "You don't carry it anymore." As the engine started, I felt something lift inside me. Years of shrinking, of apologizing, of waiting for approval that never came. We took off smoothly, rising above the terminal, above the noise, above them. Mid-flight, Evan handed me his tablet. "Something you should see." It was an email sent moments ago from my father. Subject line, "Please." He wrote about mistakes, about pride, about not understanding. He apologized in paragraphs instead of actions, as if length could fix years of dismissal. Brianna followed with a voice note, her tone shaky, rehearsed. She spoke about family, about how we should stick together. Mom sent a message that hurt the most. "I should have protected you." Evan watched my face carefully. "You don't owe them forgiveness to have peace." "I know," I said, "but I do owe myself honesty." I didn't reply right away. Hours later, when we landed, the sun was low and golden, painting the runway in warm light. Evan helped me down the steps, and the breeze smelled like ocean and citrus. A driver waited. So did someone else, my family. They stood awkwardly near the private terminal entrance. No luggage, no confidence. Just regret and hope tangled together. Dad stepped forward slowly. "We didn't get on the flight." "I know," I said calmly. Brianna swallowed. We couldn't." Mom reached for my hands. "We were wrong." I looked at them, not as a daughter begging for love, but as a woman deciding her boundaries. "I believe you're sorry," I said. "But that doesn't erase what happened." Dad's shoulders sagged. "What can we do?" I took a breath. "You can start by treating me like an equal," I said. "Not because of who I married, not because of money, but because I'm your daughter, your sister." They nodded quickly. Too quickly. I stepped back. "But this trip," I continued, "is mine." I turned to Evan. He nodded once. "We'll talk later," I said to my family, "if respect comes first." I walked away without waiting for their response. This time, I wasn't escaping. I was choosing. The ocean outside our villa stretched endlessly, calm and blue, as if the world itself had decided to slow down for once. I stood barefoot on the balcony, coffee warming my hands, watching the waves roll in. No voices judging me, no comparisons, just space to breathe. Evan stepped beside me, slipping his jacket over my shoulders. They've been calling again. I figured, I said softly. Do you want to talk to them? Not today. He smiled. Good. For the first time in my life, peace wasn't something I had to earn. Later that afternoon, Evan and I attended a small gathering hosted by local business leaders. Nothing flashy, just conversations, introductions, and quiet respect. When people spoke to me, they didn't look past me or ask what I did before marrying him. They asked what I thought, what I wanted, what I was building. Evan never corrected anyone when they assumed I was the decision maker, because often I was. That evening, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a message from Brianna. I didn't know you were this strong, she wrote. I stared at the words for a long moment before replying. I was always strong. You just never needed me to be. The reply came almost instantly. I'm sorry. I didn't answer. Apologies don't expire, but they don't demand acceptance either. A few days later, as our vacation came to an end, Evan surprised me with one final stop. We arrived at a seaside restaurant overlooking the sunset. Candles flickered. Soft music played. It felt intimate, intentional. What's this? I asked. He pulled out a chair for me. A beginning. After dinner, he slid a thin folder across the table. Inside was a deed. My name was on it. A property, I whispered. A headquarters, Evan corrected. For the nonprofit you've been planning, the one you keep saying you'll start someday. My throat tightened. You remembered. I listen. Tears blurred my vision, not from pain, but from being seen. This is your revenge, he said gently. Not proving them wrong. Proving yourself right? I laughed softly. I don't want revenge anymore. He reached for my hand. That means you've already won. Weeks later, I finally met my family again on my terms. We sat at a quiet cafe near home. No flights, no power plays. Dad spoke first. We've been thinking a lot. I hope so, I said kindly. Mom reached across the table. We were blind. We measured worth the wrong way. Brianna nodded. I did too. I looked at them, really looked, not as people who hurt me, but as people capable of learning. I forgive you, I said. But things will be different. Dad smiled sadly. They should be. As we parted, there were no promises of perfection, just respect. And that was enough. That night, Evan and I sat on our balcony again, city lights twinkling below. Do you regret keeping our life private for so long? He asked. I shook my head. No. It showed me who loved me without conditions. He kissed my temple. That's real wealth. I leaned into him, smiling, because I didn't need applause anymore. I didn't need approval. I had love. I had purpose. And I had finally arrived not at an airport gate, but at myself.